love it. I love it. I love it. Look at this. This is the greatest thing I've ever seen.
Hey, I'm not surprised.
What's up, guys? Leyton here for UFC Gambling Addicts, coming at you with another UFC breakdown. If you want to enter the giveaway, just follow the instructions on screen. If you appreciate our breakdowns every week, hit the like button to show us your appreciation too. And as far as betting goes for last week, a bit of a rough card for the first half, but was still able to finish with a good profit. So yeah, overall decent card. Yeah, pay-per-view here, UFC 240. Enjoy the breakdown and catch you in the comments. Peace.
And welcome to episode 39 of UFC Addicts. My name is Aaron, and as always, I'm here with my co-host Leyton, and we are here to break down UFC 240. It's a pay-per-view in quotation marks here. Max Holloway versus Frankie Edgar from Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. Again, that is UFC 240. That is a pay-per-view, non-ESPN Plus card. We're here for every card, and no card shows that more than this supposed pay-per-view card. As always, I'm here with my co-host, Lane. What up, buddy?
What's up, bro? Okay, so before we get into this supposed pay-per-view, like you said, I just want to speak about Leon Edwards, man, because he's from the same country as me. He's English and Jamaican. And he was just so good. Over 25 minutes against RDA. He was just brilliant, man. And people said, you know, he has conditioning issues against Gunner. I didn't see that in the third round. Yeah, you know, a lot of people gave massive credit to RDA in that. A little bit more than I thought they would. And just, you know, Leon Edwards, he done me so proud. You know, the last guy to go to Texas and headline who was English, it was Darren Till, and it didn't go well. And yeah, Leon Edwards turned up, and just, I'm so impressed, mate. So impressed.
Yeah, it was a rough card. By that point, there was 8 decisions in, and I'll have to go back and rewatch the fight, in all honesty. I was a little bit bleary-eyed by that point. It had just not been a great card.
Mm-hmm. One too many shots.
And yeah, I had a lot. Yeah, I had a lot of beverages. Switched the pick last second from Greg Hardy to Juan Adams for some reason, which you know, it did stick. I switched to Ryan Hall the other week, so I'm 1 for 1 on my last second changes in picks. So stay tuned for next week. But either way, the rest of the card, yeah, I don't think that's what they had in mind when they were putting this card on ESPN. So, anyways, we're on to next week's card. That card looked great on paper. It didn't turn out as great. This card doesn't look amazing on paper, but there's been plenty of times before that cards like this have ended up really coming through. And there's been times where cards like this have ended up not being great too. It's you can't really know what to expect from a card. So on paper, not the most exciting card, maybe. There's some really head-scratching fights and not the best way. But then a few of these fights on here I'll make sure to highlight as we get to them. I'm very excited about. So,
well, there's not going to be 8 decisions again, surely.
Yeah, well, 9, right? It was 9 decisions, I believe.
Yeah, it was 9 decisions, and then the 10th fight was James Vick, and he was the first guy who was finished on the night, and he was the hometown guy. So, you know, story of James Vick right now. Wow.
Yeah, he has really fallen quickly.
That's 3 in a row now. 3 losses.
3 in a row. He's got to move up to 170 at least, and those guys aren't going to hit. I don't know. I think James Vick has peaked, and it's going to be hard for me to pick him against anybody who's not a newcomer from China. I'm sorry.
You crack me up, man. You crack me up.
I mean it with all due respect, but there's guys on this card here. Gavin Tucker. Excuse me, Gavin Tucker. But sorry, nasty cough here over in the States.
The weed is real.
Yeah, and then you know, so there's guys like that who get to experience what it's like to be a pretty decent favorite. Some of the favorites that I'm just looking at as we're. But let's just jump into it. I've got a lot to say, so let's jump into it. We're starting out at heavyweight with one of these newcomers. Two of these newcomers, I should say, actually. It's between Tanner, the Bulldozer Boser, and hopefully I can get your guys' name right. Giacomo Lemos. I'll go with
I'm
that.
going to call him Lemos.
So he's a 6-0 Brazilian heavyweight. My guy is 27-year-old Canadian. He's going to be fighting kind of in his hometown or near his hometown. He's 16-5-1. Tanner, the Bulldozer Boser. He's not the biggest heavyweight, so he does have a fair amount of decisions on his record. I think some of his biggest tools are his toughness, his cardio, and leg kicks. He really likes to use them throughout a fight, which you don't see a lot of heavyweights doing, particularly the cardio or leg kicks. So that's kind of refreshing to see. He's getting a fight in his hometown against a debutant here, a fellow debutant. So I think that for Tanner, he's got some experience in ACB, fighting in some bigger places. This will be the biggest crowd he fights in front of, but he's fought in larger arenas before. And I think that Tanner's going to look to gas his opponent here. I think round one is where Giacomo can really threaten. I think Giacomo has a finish in all 6 of his fights. So I think Tanner's looking to carry this to later rounds. And I think that having nearly 4 times the experience is going to be huge here. I look for a lot of leg kicks, a lot of movement. Tanner Boser is still a full-time security guard. So that is one thing to take into account here. And he has a mullet. So if those things at all affect your picks, it's just the information I'm providing. I don't know. I'm just thinking having more than 3 times the fight experience and having a full camp to prepare for here, I think I like Tanner's chances to get a decision. So I'll take Tanner to get the decision over a newcomer, Giacomo.
Nice. Okay. Lemos comes into this fight 6-0 as a pro. He's making his debut, like you said. His last 2 fights have been fought at an open weight, which was quite interesting to watch. I'm pretty sure he fought a sumo wrestler at some point, which was, just hilarious to watch when you're high. So yeah, he hasn't really been tested. He's 6-0, all finishes like you said. Tanner is a more experienced heavyweight. And I'd say he's more experienced literally everywhere in the sport. Footwork, striking, grappling, adversity, getting tired, taking losses, everywhere. Everywhere you look in MMA, Tanner should be more experienced. So, yeah, I can't really pick Lemos because Tanner is more experienced. He's more well-rounded. He's more proven. So for that reason, I'm going to literally take exactly what you took. I'm going to take Tanner Boser via decision. But what I will say is I wasn't exactly impressed watching Tanner. So if you have the same sort of read as me where you're thinking he's more experienced but he doesn't look impressive, maybe like the underdog price for Lemos would be appealing to you. But yeah, if I'm making a pick on this, Tanner Boser via decision.
Yeah, I think if Tanner loses here, he'll face that guy from Arkansas who was on the Ultimate Fighter, the fat guy.
Oh, yeah.
I think they'll fight. Yeah, those guys will definitely fight if Tanner loses here. But either way, yeah, Tanner is the favorite, -170, +140 for Giacomo.
Mm-hmm.
So
yep, it's fair. I mean, both of them, who knows?
He's got 4 times the experience. He's got 4 times the experience. That's pretty much one of the only known commodities in this fight. And he's Canadian, so he gets to fight in his home country, and I believe near his hometown. So that can help or hurt, but I think for those, it makes sense, the 170. So we're 1-for-1 on agreements and 1-for-1 on non-ridiculous lines. So we'll move us forward to the next ridiculous. This is a ridiculous fight.
Yeah, it's a bit of a strange one. So we have Carl Stewart versus Eric Koch. And I'll be breaking down Koch. So he comes into this fight.
And this is at 170.
170. So he comes into this fight 4-5. He started out at featherweight. Had a couple fights there. Then he fought at lightweight. Had a few fights there. And now he's stepping up to 170. So I'll start back around like Clay Guida. just mauled in that fight, taken down. In the second round, I'm pretty sure he spent at least 4 minutes plus on his back. I was at his last fight, which was in North Carolina against Bobby Green. He wasn't that bad in that fight. That was quite a fun fight. But yeah, this is a bit of a strange move. Stepping up to 170. He's not a guy that you watch fight and you go, oh, Eric Koch needs to step up. So this is a calculated move. Obviously, he believes he's going to be the quicker guy at 170. But if he's having trouble grappling and he's stepping up in weight, that could be a real issue here. But I do believe he has the advantage when it comes to striking. So he's going to have the smaller frame, but if he's the much quicker man, he's going to be able to get in and out and potentially score more on the feet. But like I said, the grappling could be the difference. I see Carl Stewart having the grappling advantage. Bit of a strange fight and kind of weird fight to predict, but I'm going to take Eric Koch to be able to be the quicker guy and score more and nick a decision.
Okay, fair enough. I will be breaking down Kyle Guns Up Stewart. Guns is spelled with a Z, so whatever he's trying to say there, I'm not sure. He's 30 years old, though, and has a nickname with his. Anyways, 6 foot tall welterweight out of Arizona Combat Sports. I believe that's where Bader and Aaron Simpson lead the training there. I believe, if I'm thinking of the correct spot. Kyle Stewart is 11-2 with 3 TKOs, 2 submissions. He got a pretty good win against a good guy in Jason Jackson on the Dana White Contender Series. So take your shot of apple juice and tune in tonight. And he's a former Marine, so the mental midget, the mental toughness, I don't quite question as much in a guy like Stewart, who's coming off a really rough debut. He had a rough weight cut. It was on short notice, and he got pretty steamrolled by Chance for Encounter, who's shown he's a pretty good guy since then. But regardless, definitely was kind of overwhelmed in that matchup. And now he's in for a welterweight fight where I don't see the overwhelmingness happening as much against a smaller guy in Koch. I'm confused by this choice. I think Stewart has good size for the division. He does throw strikes in bunches at times, and I think that the power and strength is just going to be a little too much for Koch. I think while Koch may be able to land more, Stewart doesn't have to land as much to have more of an effect, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. So I think that's one of the major factors here. I actually see Koch getting a little dominated here. So maybe I'm wrong, but one of the fights of Kyle Stewart's I went back and watched I really liked was one of his fights in LFA against Jaleel Watson, I believe, who it's Jaleel Williams, actually, I believe, but I'm not for sure. But either way, I think it's a guy who is going to find himself over into the UFC and the welterweight division. And I don't think he's here currently because of Kyle Stewart. So Kyle Stewart did lose to a guy, James Nakashima, recently, who's doing really well over in PFL and getting ready to fight this Thursday. But I think Stewart has a much better performance here, and I think he gets a second round TKO.
Nice.
So I'm going to take Guns Up for that TKO finish here. I think having the time to prepare, and he took a good amount of time off after that loss to Encounter. So, yeah, and I think he's got a much better matchup here against a guy named Eric Koch, who I'm not sure he should be at 170, but we'll see. So
it's a very strange move.
Koch is the slight underdog at -110. So it's -120 for Stewart, pretty much a pickup.
Yeah, that's fair odds. That's fair. It could be. That's a little surprising, man. Eric Koch +110.
Yeah, I've got to imagine people betting are aware this fight's at 170.
Yeah, you'd expect him to be at least +140 or.
Well, when I first looked at this before doing any research, I thought Stewart had cut to 155. Mm-hmm. I thought that was more likely than Koch going to 170. I'm really surprised by this move, and I just can't pick it here. So fair disagreement, but I got Stewart finishing him. I don't know if the extra weight is going to be functional for Koch or if it's just going to be extra weight. So we'll see. First disagreement, second fight in, third fight coming here. We'll see. But it's a good fight here, in my opinion, at 115, correct?
125.
120. Oh, good. Good. That's I'm glad actually. 125 between Sarah Atreta Frota and Jillian the Savage Roberts. After Frota's last foray down to 115, where she missed, I believe, by 8 pounds.
Yeah, it was a fair few.
So, yeah, and Souza still fought her, and Souza got a little bit of a generous decision, but I felt a fair decision. But Sarah Frota, 31 years old, 9-1, 2 TKOs, 5 subs, and a bunch of tattoos on her face. So, like I said, or maybe I didn't say, she's a Dan White Contender Series winner by KO in the first. So, take a strong shot of that apple juice. Before the Contender Series, she was generally a grappler. So it was impressive for her to go on and show she had the KO power. And since she showed some of that confidence in her stand-up against Souza as well, but she really had a bad weight cut, missed by 8 pounds. While she had some success in the fight, she was definitely drained from the weight cut, and it took away from her effectiveness. She was a tougher and bigger 115er, and I think that she'll come forward and pressure similarly here at 125, and she's just more suited for that. But I think she's got another tough grappler in Jillian, and I think Jillian's going to be basically more aggressive and more varied in the fight. I think Jillian's looked better on her feet as she's gone along here, but her submission game is still where she gets her bread buttered, and I see her getting a submission in the second after a battle in the first. So I'll take Jillian Roberts by second round submission in good back and forth first round before Jillian's conditioning being the difference, I think.
Nice. Okay, Jillian Robertson. She's actually one of my favorite female fighters currently. She's 3-1 inside the UFC. I was at her fight against Molly McCann in Liverpool, and she was somehow an underdog in that fight, and you know that choke was just so dope. So yeah, all 3 of her wins coming via submission. You know, she's about that life. She wants to get on the mat with you. She's looking to submit you. She's about that life. But we are seeing, you know, she's very young, and we're still seeing those improvements fight by fight. And I don't think she's as comfortable, nowhere near as comfortable on the feet than she is clinching. And Sarah Frota in that fight against Livia Souza, man, she was scary. And I know this is at 125, but she is still a very big girl. Her hands are very heavy, and she looked strong in the clinch too. I know she was at points nearly submitted, but you know, for the most part, she looked very strong on the mat and in the clinch. So yeah, there's a path for both girls. Jillian Robertson's looking to submit Frota. Frota's defense on the mat against Souza was good enough to not get submitted. Jillian Robertson, you know, she's very good at jiu-jitsu, so she could pull this off. But if this fight's standing, I think Frota's going to be the aggressor. I think her hands are much more heavier, and she's just a nasty girl, man. Like you said, she's got tats all over her body, on her face. You know, she's about that life. So 2 completely different styles. It's a decent fight to predict and break down and think about. But I'm gonna have to take Sarah Frota here. You know, I really like Jillian Robertson, and if she proves me wrong, you know, I'm gonna be happy either way, because you know I really like her as a fighter. But yeah, I'm gonna take the girl here who is the striker. I'm gonna take Sarah Frota via decision.
Okay. Fair enough. I think that you're much more impressed by Frota's stand-up than I am so far. So we'll see. The last fight she had a nearly 10-pound advantage, and then we've seen Livia Souza not that great on her feet also. So,
yeah, she definitely had an off night the other night.
Yeah, that was a rough.
But credit to Van Buren as well. She, who said it? Someone on commentary said she fought like a vet, and she really did.
And she went right to calling out. So lost in that menagerie of decisions was a couple of impressive decisions like that one with Van Buren. But either way, the favorite for this one is Jillian. So she's a minus 140, plus 110 for Frota.
Yeah, that's decent. That's close. It's a close fight. That's decent.
Yeah, and I'm surprised because I believe I've only picked Jillian in one of her fights so far in the UFC. So
I've picked her pretty much every fight.
Yeah, so that's one of the fights I'm looking forward to. Ironically, two of the best fights on the card are at 125. One being a male, one being a female. This one being the male one between Alexandre Pantoja and Davidson Figueiredo. I will be breaking down Pantoja. The 29-year-old out of Nova Union is 21-3, 5-1 in the UFC, with his only loss being a close decision against Dustin Ortiz. He's won his last 3 over Wilson Hayes by TKO, Sasaki by submission, and Brendan Moreno by decision. It was the second time he'd beaten Moreno. I've been really impressed with this guy since coming off of his season of The Ultimate Fighter Brazil. He's just really well-rounded and now has added some legit finishing ability on the feet to go with his jiu-jitsu. And I think this is the battle of the other two great flyweights in the division currently, besides Joey B and Cejudo. So I think this is I guess you could put Formiga in there also. I think this is a really great, really close fight. I just think Pantoja is going to look to wrestle when Figueiredo looks to plan and strike, and I think that will be the difference. And there'll be times where I think Figueiredo is taken down, has to spend time and energy getting up, and that will end up being the difference in a really close decision for Pantoja.
Nice. Okay. Okay, Davison Figueiredo comes into this fight 4 wins, 1 loss inside the UFC. And you was talking about Pantoja being one of your favorite guys. Davison Figueiredo is one of my favorite guys at 125. He's a power puncher. He's very big for the division. Even like before that loss, he looked like a very well-rounded guy. His scrambles were very good. He looked good with the takedowns. He looked very well-rounded. Now, he took that loss against Formiga. The difference being the grappling, the takedown. He couldn't get off of his back. And we've seen him taken down before, but he's able to scramble away. But this time it was a different level of class, and that was the difference. So I see Pantoja being a better striker than Formiga. But I also believe Pantoja has very good jiu-jitsu. Maybe not as good as Formiga, but I took him to get that submission win against Sasaki, and I was very impressed. You highlighted the loss to Dustin Ortiz. I actually had him winning 29-28 that fight. Very close fight, but yeah, according to me, he should be undefeated. So I like both of these guys. They're very good for the division. And 125 has been talked about, like, it's going to go. So these sort of fights need to take place, and that's exactly what we're seeing at 125 now. We're just getting good fight after good fight here. Pantoja ranked number 3, Figueiredo ranked number 4. It's a very decent fight to think about, but I'm going to have to stick with my boy. I'm going to have to stick with Figueiredo. If he's able to stuff the takedowns and just keep it a striking match, maybe Pantoja gasses out a little bit the way he did against Dustin Ortiz. But at the same time, Dustin Ortiz is very relentless, and Figueiredo is more of a stalker. So, yeah, very close fight, but I'm going to take Figueiredo via decision.
All right, fair enough. I expected that disagreement. So Pantoja is the -130 favorite. You got the underdog at +100. So
yeah, it's close.
Yeah, I think I personally feel the odds should be closer to Pantoja, or like more with Pantoja actually. So I think he's more of a -170 here. So I'm happy with that price at this point. I think that the hole in Figueiredo's game has been shown here, and I think Pantoja is. I think Pantoja would beat Formiga right now, so it's kind of some MMA math, I guess, which doesn't really work. But I do think Pantoja is as good as Formiga in the wrestling and has better striking. So
fair disagreement.
So
okay, moving on to the next one. This is the 5th fight. We have Gavin Tucker versus Woo Choi. I believe, maybe.
Sung Woo Choi.
Yeah, we'll go with that. Okay, Gavin Tucker comes into this fight 1 win, 1 loss inside the UFC. He's quite short for the division, 5'7", I believe. So yeah, quite a small guy. But I did learn that he had trained and studied Muay Thai kickboxing in Thailand early on in his career, and knowing that information, watching his fights, you can really see that he's a very good kicker. Just a well-rounded guy. You know, he can wrestle. Just a decent guy. You know. So with Woo Choi, he debuted against Evloev, and we saw the grappling was the difference in that one. Here we have Gavin Tucker, who is probably a better striker than Evloev, where Evloev is just looking to grapple mainly, where Tucker is more well-rounded, more of a specialist. So this could be, you know, this fight here could be just as tough as his debut. And yeah, I just think Gavin Tucker is a more well-rounded guy. He's a good kicker. He can wrestle. So yeah, maybe that's the difference here. Woo Choi didn't really do enough in his debut to impress me. He looked a little bit dangerous in the moments where there wasn't grappling, but for the most part, he didn't really impress me. So yeah, I'm going to take Gavin Tucker to get a TKO in round number 2.
Okay, I will be breaking down Sung Woo Choi. When you say Sung Woo didn't impress you, I can definitely agree with that. And Tucker has given me 2 fights now where I haven't been super impressed, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
Even as when I wasn't crazy about it. And Sung Woo Choi being near 6 foot tall featherweight, I think could pose a lot of problems. That Evloev fight we talked about, he's 7-3, 0-1 in the UFC, lost to Evloev in his debut. Evloev, I believe, was nearly a 500 favorite against Choi. Choi really didn't, when he had a chance to show some offense, it did look impressive on the feet. He was moderately successful stopping the takedowns too at times. And I don't think Tucker is as good or well-rounded as Evloev. So I think that the size advantage is going to play a huge favor here for Choi. And I think Choi is going to have a much better performance here. I think Choi ends up in a similar situation here to what Jinsu Sun was in this past weekend against Batista.
Okay, moving on to the next one. We have Hakeem Dawodu, I believe, versus Yoshinori Horie. So, yeah, not sure about that name. Yeah, Hakeem comes into this fight 2 wins, 1 loss inside the UFC. His debut was a very quick loss, got TKO'd pretty brutally. Since then, he's had 2 fights where both performances were relatively good performances. No finish in those performances, but for the most part, he controlled both of those fights. So yeah, I'm expecting the same thing here. Obviously, that debut was, you know, he rushed into it. He got TKO'd very, very quickly. He's learned from that. We've seen that in his last 2 performances. I'll be honest, I don't know much about his opponent, Horie. I've heard he's a power puncher. So yeah, that's all I really know. But for Dawodu, I'm going to take him. I've been impressed in his last 2 fights. He has power. He's a good kickboxer. When he keeps the fight at distance, he just controls the fight from what I've seen. So, yeah, I'll take Hakeem, and I'm actually going to take him to get his first finish this time. I'll take him via TKO in round number 2.
Okay, well, perfect breakdown, I think, also of Yoshinori Horie. Great breakdown of him, as there is very little on him. He's on a 2-fight win streak. He's 8-1 overall. He's not fought really too much anybody of note that I've ever heard of, but he's got some finishes, mostly by punches, so it does appear he is a power puncher from what I can tell, but there was no tape on him available, so I'll be honest there. He's fighting out of Alliance, so I do like that is a good camp. So, but it's not the Alliance in America. It's a Alliance over. I just found out it's Alliance over in I believe it is in Tokyo. Yep. So it's not even the alliance I thought it was. So I'm not really sure here. I'll be honest. I'm a little bit confused at
Hmm.
this fight.
It's a tough one to pick, man, because there is literally no tape.
Yeah, yeah.
And he's knocking guys out, so it's a tough
Right.
one to gauge. He could just go in there and start Hakeem, and he has got a pretty crazy price from what I've seen. But from the
Yeah,
most part, you'd have to take Hakeem there.
yeah. The teams looked really impressive, and but a power puncher does seem to be one of the things that can beat a guy like Hakeem. And moving on to our next fight at the women's flyweight division, it is between Vivian Araujo and Alexis. I think it's Alligator Davis or something like that. But
Yeah.
I'll be breaking down Vivian Araujo. She is now 7-1 with 2 TKOs and 3 submissions. She's coming off an outstanding short notice debut against Talita Bernardo, where she just outpaced her before starching her with that overhand right. Originally claiming she go to strawweight. Luckily, she's not doing that, and she's sticking with just flyweight here. I think with Alexis Davis, she has another big, slow grappler. So I believe Araujo is going to light her up on the feet. Davis has looked very hittable lately and very slow on the feet.
Hmm.
And I think she gets the second round TKO for Vivian Araujo, who hopefully just sticks at 125, but I was very impressed in her debut.
Nice. Okay, Alexis Davis comes into this fight 6 wins, 4 losses inside the UFC. She's a black belt in BJJ. If she's able to take you to the mat and take your back, she has a very nasty rear naked choke. So she probably submits Vivian if she takes her back, or even if she's able to work with her on the mat. But I agree with you. She's very, very hittable. The head movement is very non-existent. As for striking on the feet, she does fire a nice body kick and the calf kicks. But apart from that, she's not about throwing hands really. And her head is just always in the center line. Like, she's not ducking it off or finding those angles on the feet. She's just pressuring to get into the clinch. And we have seen that. We've seen her head, basically brutalized until she's in the clinch. So yeah, I pretty much agree with everything you just said. I'll agree with you. I'll take Vivian TKO round number 2.
Beautiful. I'm back on the agreement train here. Vivian is the favorite, minus 270, plus 210 for Alexis. I'm fine with it, but could be a little closer.
It's women's MMA. Anything can happen. It's very volatile.
Vivian only had one performance. It was at short notice at 135. So sometimes with these fighters, when they have time to prep, they actually come out not as sharp, often, So, but I honestly think that this is a pretty similar type of opponent to her debut against Bernardo here. Kind of a slower, plodding grappler who's going to be willing to trade. And yeah, Davis is just too hittable for me to take here. So
I agree with you. Okay.
All right.
Moving on. You do it. Lead us off.
Okay. This one is at 185, and it is between Marc-Andre Barriault and Christophe Jotko, the Joker. I will be breaking down Marc-Andre Power Bar Barriault, who just fought pretty recently here in his debut. The 29-year-old 6'1", fought at 205 in his debut. He's now fighting at 185. He's 11-2 now overall, 8 TKOs. When he made his debut, he looked to be a guy with some really heavy hands and a good double leg takedown. Looked powerful on top, and looked like he wanted to kind of engage in the wrestling, but kind of had some trouble against Sanchez in his debut, and it's a pretty dominant decision for Sanchez, I think, all things considered. Barriault just didn't have a lot to offer. He's had most of his fights in Canada, so he's going to have some hometown crowd on his side, so that could be helpful. And he's fought some decent competition prior to the UFC, and it's gone 5 rounds on multiple occasions, so I think that could really help. And I think he'll be the bigger, stronger guy, but he does get tagged a lot. and he does seem to have a good chin. But a guy like Jotko, I think, tags you enough, and I think eventually he could possibly look to take him down and submit him. But we'll take Jotko to get a finish in round 2 over Barriault. I think Jotko's just a better guy, and this is a really tough follow-up fight for Barriault, who maybe rushed into it so he could fight in his home country.
Nice. Okay, Krzysztof Jotko comes into this fight 7 wins, 4 losses inside the UFC. He's a fairly decent middleweight for the most part. Against the lower tier guys, he looks, fairly decent, not many struggles. But then you kind of climb up the rankings and he's fighting better opponents, and that's where he's struggling. So, just like you said, you anticipate there could be a submission. Jotko is a brown belt or even a black belt at this point. I'm not too sure. Very, very good at jiu-jitsu. But surprisingly, he has no submission wins in the UFC. So, that's a little surprising. So, watching all of his tape, for the most part, he's a guy who likes to circle, likes to kickbox, likes to keep the fight at kicking distance. And if he can fight that fight... just like Caceres last week, if he can fight that fight, Jotko, he'll win those decisions. But then we have seen, when it is a guy who is a little better and they're able to shut that distance and test the chin, Jotko does go to sleep. So maybe it's one or the other. With Marc-Andre in his debut, I pretty much agree with you. There wasn't a lot to offer, but for the times... for the moments when the fight was out of the clinch and he was, off of the mat, he was tagging Sanchez. He landed some big shots, but just, too tired. He worked a lot in the clinch, so he wasn't able to get the finish. But for the moments that he was out of the clinch, I was really anticipating him getting that finish. So here, knowing that Jotko has no submission wins, I'm going to anticipate that he does his normal circle on the outside, try to kickbox instead of clinching. So, bit of a strange fight, a hard fight to predict. But I'm going to take Marc-Andre to be able to shut that distance and shut the lights off of Jotko. So, I'll take him in round 2 as well. I'll take Marc-Andre via TKO in round number 2.
Fair enough. Wow. That's, I think, our 4th disagreement now.
Yep, I predicted 4.
All right. Jotko is the minus 170 favorite. So not a huge favorite, but decent. Plus 140 for Marc-Andre. I'm surprised it's that close.
Yeah, it's good odds. Decent odds. I don't disagree with it too much. Jotko has fought better guys, but, styles make fights, and we've seen Jotko go to sleep, and we've also seen him kickbox his way to decisions, and he's very good on the floor too. So, decent fight. Looking forward to that one.
Yeah, it's a good one. You go ahead and lead us into our next fight here on the main card at 155.
Okay, we have Olivier Aubin-Mercier versus Arman, and I'm just going to call him Arman. I'll be breaking down Aubin-Mercier.
Tsarukyan.
That's the one. Nice. European culture there. Beautiful.
That's us Americans / Canadians.
American-Canadian guy. Aubin-Mercier comes into this fight also 7-4 inside the UFC. And I'm a big fan of this guy. I think he's a very well-rounded guy. He's a strong grappler, very good on the mat. And also proven that he is comfortable striking. I was at his performance in New York live on that Khabib card, and he finished Evan Dunham, I believe, very quickly in the first round. For me, he has proven that he's able to strike. He's a very well-rounded guy. I'm a fan of him. Truly, I'm a fan. But in his last 2 fights, it hasn't been the striking that's got him the loss. It's just the fact he hasn't been able to keep up with the pace of the fight. Gilbert Burns and Alex Hernandez, they put a pace on him, and conditioning, I believe, was the difference. He isn't able to sustain that kind of pace in his last 2 fights. Now, I was very impressed with Arman in his debut loss. He made it very, very hard for Islam to secure takedowns. And quite honestly, the moments he was also not in a grappling exchange, he looked very dangerous on the feet too. But Islam is, he's a very good grappler and, very experienced. And he got it done. But despite Arman losing that fight, I was very impressed. So maybe he's able to implement a strong pace in this fight and start to really take over late in the second and the third. So I'm going to take Arman via decision.
Okay. I will be breaking down Arman Tsarukyan, the 22-year-old, is now 13-2. He was on an 11-fight win streak prior to his short notice fight with Islam Makhachev. I'll just call him Islam. He's a tough Armenian, well-rounded fighter, good level of aggression. He looks pretty good everywhere. He just was a little bit outgunned against Islam. And honestly, after that fight, I was expecting him to cut to featherweight. Mm-hmm. So I thought he looked a little bit undersized for 155, at least at this stage in his career, being only 22. And I don't have any doubts in his cardio or his pacing. He's a very good young fighter. I just think he's got a really tough fight here with Aubin-Mercier. For one, Mercier's been on a little bit of a skid as of late. He's been a little bit up and down, I think. But the other part is I think Mercier is one of the bigger and stronger guys at 155. And definitely. He definitely uses a Khabib type of approach. I won't say he is Khabib because there is only one Khabib, but he uses a pretty focused, grappling heavy approach that was similar to what Islam used, similar to what Khabib uses himself. And I think Arman kind of caught a tough break here in his second fight in the UFC because I think he's going to be one of the better guys to go 0-2. I think Arman's going to outmaneuver him to a decision. And I think if Arman can find a way to keep this on the feet, he needs to really focus on not using a lot of his grappling. Because even if Aubin's defensively grappling, he wants him to clinch. He wants to be touching Arman. Arman needs to make this a kickboxing fight. And I'm just not confident he's going to be able to do that here. So I'm going to take another Canadian. I'm going to take Mercier to get the decision.
It's a fair disagreement, mate. Honestly, you mentioned the size difference, and that is a strong factor here. Yeah.
Aubin is a very unassuming kind of nerdy looking dude. So you just don't realize how he's a big grappler. And I thought that Arman looked like he should be at 145 against Islam. Mm-hmm. So I think I just think that Arman can definitely get a finish on the feet, and if he really focuses on the feet, I just think if he engages in grappling, it's just a tough little break of his first two fights being against Islam and Aubin-Mercier. That's a pretty tough roll of the dice for the 22-year-old. But we'll see. But another disagreement, that is Cinco. That is number 5 in the disagreement category. So
did we get the odds on that one? Oh, no. Okay, go ahead. Right Sorry, now. I'm high.
No worries. I am as well. So the favorite here, Arman, is minus 205.
Yeah, that's a little deep.
Ridiculous to me. That is ridiculous to me against Aubin-Mercier in Canada. Aubin-Mercier plus 165.
So the only way that price makes sense is the majority of people laying money on Arman are very confident that he is able to keep it a kickboxing fight. That's the only way -2 makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, they're really judging harshly decision loss to Hernandez and Gilbert Burns, two of the top guys at 155. He is on a 2-fight losing streak, but he wasn't outshined in either of those fights, and I did anticipate a finish against Gilbert Burns, and I was wrong there.
And there was grappling in both of those fights. So
absolutely,
there's going to be grappling in this fight, for sure.
Yeah. And and I'm also, just fun fact, 9-0 in predictions on Aubin-Mercier on Tapology. So
there you go.
I picked him quite a few of the times, but I even got it right when I picked Chad Laprise over him somehow.
Wow. Mercier, you've got it nailed, mate. You've got that one nailed. 9-0.
The Quebec kid. And that's one of the things I love about Tapology. is that you can make your picks on there, and they also have the most information you're going to find on a lot of these breakdowns with, like, they'll put past odds up there, they'll put your pick history. So,
well, fun
either
fact
way, yeah,
before moving on,
sure.
and it is a funner fact, to be honest. I'm 2-8 on Donald Cerrone, and Tony Ferguson being one of those out of the two. So yeah, don't really trust me on a Donald Cerrone fight. Fade me, because I'm 2-8 on Donald Cerrone fights.
I guess trust me on Aubin-Mercier fights as of now, but maybe I'm due a loss here. But I think it will be a good fight, and I'm excited to see Arman. But from what I saw, I just think I'd be more excited for Arman if it was at featherweight. Maybe I'm being unfair here, and maybe he comes in. I mean, at 22, fight to fight, you really improve. But that's a decent sneaky sleeper of a fight. And the next fight is my fight of the night. So go ahead and lead us into it.
Okay, we have Geoff Neal versus Niko Price at 170. Geoff Neal comes into this fight 3-0 inside the UFC, previously fighting on the Contender Series also. So, you know, as you would say, take a shot of apple juice.
Absolutely.
Looking at the fight against Frank Camacho, extremely, extremely impressive. Even to finish it with the head kick, and the head kick was just so clean. Camacho, you know, didn't see it coming, and probably didn't know what happened until he woke up. It was devastating. So, and then you look at his fight against, who was the next guy? Belal Muhammad. The takedown defense.
Remember the name.
Yeah. The takedown defense. At one point in that fight, Geoff Neal was holding himself up with one hand on the mat, whilst Belal Muhammad had his legs clamped in the air, and Geoff Neal was just like doing like just holding himself on like one arm, like the strength, everything, and not to gas out as well. You know, he slowed down a little bit, of course. You know, Belal Muhammad is going to make anyone slow down a little bit, but to still be able to effectively strike in that fight. And really, you know, damage Belal Muhammad and stuff a few takedowns as well was extremely impressive. Now, something else that was also very impressive was Niko Price, his last fight. I'm sure you'll go over it. You know, he got rocked and hurt very badly in that fight, and just proved how big his heart is. One of the best comeback wins of all time, in my opinion. So, you know, you're looking at this fight thinking, you know, how do you pick a winner here? It's a very good fight on paper, and I'm sure it's going to be a very good fight in the cage. You know, you predicted fight of the night. But I'm going to say that Geoff Neal here is just too powerful. I think if he hurts Niko Price, there's no coming back the way Mean... was it Mean against... No.
Yeah, it was 10 minutes.
Yeah, Tim Mean. There's no way of coming back the way he came back there. If Geoff Neal hits you, you're going to know about it, and it's probably, you know, waking up and realizing. So, yeah, I'm very impressed with Geoff Neal. A little more so than Niko Price, but I like both guys. But I'll take Geoff Neal via TKO in round number 1.
And I'll be breaking down Niko the Hybrid Price, 13-2 record overall, 9 TKOs, 3 submissions, and his 13 wins. 5-2 with 1 no contest in his UFC career so far. Definitely notable wins being his first round TKO of Alan Joban, the crazy hammer fists against Randy Brown, and then his ankle breaking KO of Tim Means. This guy, even his loss against Razak Al Hassan, he got knocked out within the first minute. He was trading back and forth. That fight to me is one that I think a lot of people are going to focus on, and I understand why. It's another guy who was really dynamic and explosive like Geoff Neal. What Niko Price did in that fight is he took his game plan and he decided to not show up with one. He threw it completely out the window. He stood with his back against the cage and traded with Al Hassan, the worst thing you could possibly do in the first minute when Al Hassan was at his freshest. He got starched and came back, and then against Tim Means, kind of was doing the same thing. Trading, going back and forth with him. Yeah, it was really exciting, and he got lucky enough to land the right shot at the right time and get the KO. I think the first few minutes could be really violent for Niko, and I could definitely see a 3-minute or less TKO for Geoff Neal, and I totally understand anybody picking that. I'm gonna bet that Niko uses his elusiveness a little bit, which he has not shown in his last few fights, but he did show against Alan Jovan, and he has shown in other fights. I follow both guys on Instagram. They're both preparing in very different ways. Geoff Neal's doing a lot of resistance training, a lot of powerful core movement, a lot of explosive movement type drills. Niko Price is doing a lot of movement and balancing and just overall cardio. So if it's a 3-minute fight, Geoff Neal won, I believe. And I think Niko can win in those 3 minutes too, but I think most likely it's a Geoff Neal. If it goes longer than that, I think the longer it goes, the more it goes to Niko. And I'm actually going to bet that he is able to kind of just exhaust with both cardio and overall pace and just output. I think Niko is going to get a second round TKO.
Nice.
I'm going to take Niko to get the second round TKO. I'm going to look for him to grapple a little bit here, even if it's not to keep him down, it's just to make him work a little bit. And Niko ends up surprising him, and I'll say a head kick I see in the second round for Niko as Geoff does start to drop his hands as fights go on. So
decent.
Yeah,
very interesting.
That's our 6th disagreement there.
Wow.
So, Niko Price, the force is not with me here. Plus 250 underdog. So
that's a little crazy.
25 for Geoff Neal.
Yeah.
So,
that's a little deep, man. Like,
I mean,
Niko Price could be less of an underdog here. Just a little, you know?
Niko Price did not get starched against Vicente Luque. He did lose that fight to Luque, but Randy Brown, he was able to really tire him out in that first round, and then even when Randy got to a decent position, he was the pressure guy and knocked him out. I'll live with it. So I think that Niko has shown, I mean, even if you go back to Niko's debut against Brandon Thatch, which was another really large welterweight, he knows how to he knows how to avoid these guys' power. So the only guy he didn't do that against really was Razak Al Hassan. So
it's a fair disagreement. There's paths for both guys, for sure.
I think that at that price, I particularly like Niko Price, ironically.
Oh, okay. With that one, I'll move us on into the co-main. We have Chris Cyborg versus Felicia Spencer. And I'll be breaking down a girl that I underestimated in Felicia Spencer. So she comes into this fight now 1-0 inside the UFC. I underestimated her jiu-jitsu. But maybe at the same time, I overestimated Megan Anderson's grappling a little bit. Maybe I should have looked a little deeper into the mauling Holly Holm gave her. So, that's fair play. Felicia Spencer 1-0, and she's fighting Chris Cyborg. So, the way I look at this fight is Chris Cyborg is light years ahead of Felicia Spencer in the striking department. And she's just overall game, Cyborg's had 22 pro fights. Felicia Spencer's had 7. So if Felicia Spencer wasn't kind of thrown into some sort of deep end with the debut, she's been like thrown into the Atlantic Ocean or something here. Like, this is like the biggest mismatch I've ever seen. But for the UFC's point of view, it kind of makes sense, because if they wanted to promote Megan Anderson, they was like trying to feed Felicia Spencer to her, and Spencer won. So now, if she wins this, like, she has like really, really good promoting straight off the bat, like 2 fights in, and it's going to look very good for the UFC. On the other hand, if she gets destroyed, it looks good for the UFC too, because Chris Cyborg's getting her confidence back. Maybe shouts out Amanda Nunes after the fight. Who knows? But the way I'm looking at this fight is Felicia Spencer has one way to win, and it's via sub. If she can do it, hats off to her. But Chris Cyborg is a monster. I predicted Amanda Nunes to beat her, and I am extremely confident here that she doesn't get beat again. So I'll take Chris Cyborg via TKO in round number 1.
Fair enough. Yeah, before I get into this, some of the chatter has been really weird about Cyborg after this loss. People are like, we don't know if she's like Ronda Rousey yet, where she can't come back from a loss, and like they question if she has an ego. And there's plenty of MMA fighters who lose and come back from losses. For one, and for two, Cyborg lost I know it wasn't an MMA fight, but she lost a kickboxing fight a couple of years ago. She got worked by Joanna Bars. You can look it up. And then right after that fight, she went right back to winning. So she is not afraid of losing. She lost to what a lot of people now call the GOAT and Amanda Nunes. And yeah, she got starched last time. Now she has a really green opponent in Felicia Spencer, who I put is taking 500 steps up in competition here. So that's a rough estimate. I didn't count the amount of steps that she took up in competition from Megan Anderson. But regardless, I think Cyborg is taking a good amount of time off. I think she's going to be hungry. First round TKO, I'll keep it short. Not much of a drama there. We will not be disagreeing on the co-main event. Felicia Spencer is a plus 475, minus 700 for Cyborg. I don't know what Cyborg fights anymore.
I said when she was going to fight Amanda Nunes, I believe like Cyborg was what, like minus 3 or 4, and I said like that is literally a pick'em for Cyborg, because when you get such a name, you're not going to go lower than anything, regardless of who you're fighting. Same with John Jones. Like if John Jones ever gets down to minus 3, that's a pick'em. But yeah, minus 7. You know, it's not minus 1,000, but yeah, minus 7's pretty deep. But I'm fine with it. I think she gets a TKO in round number 1.
You can probably get it down to minus 500 if you do a first round TKO or something. You know? So
yeah, that's decent. That's fun.
Yeah, it's fine. And now we're on to what is, I guess, the main event of the evening. You can lead us into it. People still wait for my main event pick, I guess, even though, like, I'm not sure why you do it anymore. Last week I did get it right, so it's no fun anymore. I mean, like, I get them right sometimes, I get them wrong sometimes.
Yeah, it's not a streak anymore. I feel you.
Yeah, it's just another fight. The main events are just another fight for me. So,
okay.
Yeah, go ahead and lead us. Actually, I'll lead us in. I have the challenger.
Go on.
I'll lead us in. The fight is between Max Holloway and Frankie Edgar for the 145 belt. I'll be breaking down Frankie Edgar. So yeah, here we go. Frankie Edgar is fighting for a title in 2019. I'm kind of shocked, I'll be honest. Frankie the Answer Edgar is 23-6-1 overall. His last fight coming against Cub Swanson back in April of 2018. It's now July of 2019.
15 months.
Yeah, 15 months. Edgar was supposed to fight the Korean Zombie in the fight where Yair took the fight last minute, I believe. And Edgar tore his bicep, so he hasn't fought since then because of an injury. Before the Cub Swanson fight, he got KO'd by Brian Ortega pretty ruthlessly with punches. It was Brian Ortega's first KO ever and only KO ever, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. So, I mean, he's fought a lot of guys. He's beaten some of them. I am confused why he's in this position at this point in his career. I think Max Holloway stepped up and decided he wanted to be the Canadian-Hawaiian guy, I guess, and step up here. So I'll stop kind of complaining about the fight and focus on my path to victory, I think, for Frankie Edgar, which would be obviously wrestling. It's the place he has an advantage. He can hope to push a pace on Max, hope that as Max is getting older, cutting down to 145 is getting a little harder for him and maybe not paying dividends in the cardio. He's got to wrestle. I do think it's possible that he can do that and eke out a decision, I'll be honest. I think he can out-wrestle Max Holloway for 3 out of 5 rounds pretty easily. I'm not favoring it, and I don't think it would be easy, but I can see it happening easily, I guess. I'll be honest. I am not really sure how this fight is going to go. I think that Max Holloway could kind of come in there and early and often really, wear him out. And I think that if he chooses to do that, that would be the smart thing. I think keeping Frankie around through 5 rounds, all the way through the 5 rounds, would not be wise. I think the longer this fight goes, the more Frankie could maneuver himself to a point where he's winning a decision or a split decision. He needs to just wrestle, and I do think Holloway's going to be able to avoid it. I'm just not sure how impressive of a fight this will be. I think this could be kind of a closer, grittier fight than people are expecting. But I'll take Max Holloway to get the decision.
Nice.
Just
right. Okay.
I'll be honest.
Okay, so I feel your vibe. It is a strange main event because Frankie Edgar, 2019, like you said. But I've looked very deeply into this fight. So try and feel what I'm gonna bring for this main event here. So Max Holloway, 16-4 inside the UFC, is a very, very good record. Some would say he's the GOAT at 145. Obviously, you have Conor McGregor and Jose Aldo, but I wouldn't argue with you if you said, Max Holloway's the GOAT. One thing for sure, he's definitely cementing his legacy as a GOAT at 145. Frankie Edgar is a household name at 145. You mentioned it's 2019. I agree with you, but it's still a very good name to take for your resume, as you guys would say. So yeah, looking at Max's last fight, I took Dustin Poirier in that fight. The difference wasn't that, a lot of people said Dustin Poirier didn't really gas out or, looked good enough and didn't gas to expected. But I disagree. I think he gassed quite a bit after that second round. I think he was very fatigued after the second round. The reason why Max Holloway wasn't able to finish him is because Dustin Poirier had so much more power, and the power of a fatigued man was still the difference in stopping the barrage. So you look at this one, and usually at 145 or any fight of Max Holloway's, he has that first round, he has the second round, and then he starts to really up it. He ups it each round. But normally he'll say to the commentating team, like, he's done this round 4. So he's the type of guy who feels you out, reads your pattern, and then takes over. But you mentioned the fact that Frankie Edgar could wrestle, and that could be the difference in a decision. And I completely agree with you because, like I just said, Max Holloway is used to feeling out his opponents. So that first and second round, the feeling out process could be, detrimental to losing a decision. So for me, Max Holloway actually has to do a lot in the first and the second round. I think he can't take his time and read the footwork, because there is no point doing that for Frankie Edgar. We know what he's about. He's a relentless pressure guy, and if he's able to get into that distance where he's landing shots, you have to assume that you're going to be put up against the fence or double-legged, single-legged. He's that relentless guy. So for me, this time, Max Holloway has to gain the respect of Frankie Edgar. Max Holloway has to be the guy to do stuff in those first 10 minutes. And if he doesn't, then it could get a bit tricky. And those lines could become very different after the first 10 minutes. But I'm going to assume that Max Holloway is intelligent enough to know that. I'm going to assume that he does a lot in those first 2 rounds and wins a decision. So I'll agree with you, but I completely get why it's a strange fight to break down. And when you realise that Max Holloway can't really do what he's used to, it's strange. So I agree with you. It's a strange fight, but I'll take Max Holloway via decision.
Well, we agree for now, but stay tuned because I think I'll be going back and forth on this one. Yeah.
Fair play, mate.
I'm very unsure, and looking at the odds, I'm even more unsure. Frankie Edgar's a plus 340 underdog. It
could change a lot in those first 10 minutes.
Yeah, minus 410 for Max Holloway here, coming off a pretty bad beating against Dustin Poirier. So we don't know the effects of that. We still don't know effects of that weird weight cut he had against Khabib. There's a lot of uncertainty in this fight, that's for sure. And Chico is very excited about the main event, as are we.
What's your fight of the night?
My fight of the night, Geoff Neal and Niko Price, for sure.
I'm going to take the main event. I think the fact that Max Holloway has to adjust so much, I think it's going to be very fun from the first round.
Proud. I mean, that's your fight of the night. Is this the fight of the night they'd reward? Because I'm not sure.
No, it's probably that TKO, Neal.
Yeah, it's probably, like if it's your fight of the night, that's a little different. I think Frota and Jillian Robertson is going to be another one that I think is a good one, but I don't see it winning fight of the night from Dana White. So
this is a decent enough card in some areas.
When you really look into this card, it actually gets much more appealing. That main event is, I think, a really close fight. I don't mean to say who I'm rooting for, but I hope it's not, personally. I hope Max Holloway really shows up and shows. Yeah, I don't mean to have a rooting interest here, with all due respect to both guys and everybody, but I want to see a dominant performance from Holloway here that solidifies him. And I hope that he really comes out hungry and realizes that Edgar is a dangerous opponent, and Edgar can win 3 rounds off anybody at 145.
He's a vet.
He really can. He's a vet. He's been focused on this fight that's been canceled twice before this, and I guess the UFC they had to put someone in there, and Yair has gone missing again, so here we are.
Okay. But, we're back next week with Robbie Lawler versus Colby. That's a fun card. Like we said at the start of this card, this is a pay-per-view. It doesn't really feel like one, but like you said, when you really look into it, there's some interesting fights here and there. Not much else to say. I appreciate you all, guys, and that's me signing off.
Yep, I agree. And as Eddie Bravo always says, look into it. Peace out.